Hello, Cheers to Business listeners. I'm Ashley Smith, Vice President of Wholesale Pharmacy for DocRx and listener of Cheers to Business. And I want to tell you about the great company I work for. DocRx is a family-oriented company dedicated to tailor operational solutions for patient health and compliance programs that increases the quality and efficiency of patient-centered care, and always with the mission of the patient's health first. With over 10 years of experience helping doctors and their patients with diagnostic tests, patient monitoring, medical supplies, compliance, wholesale pharmacy, physician dispensing, billing, and much more. DocRx is your patient and health compliance solution, both under one roof. To find out how DocRx can help you, your hospital, pharmacy, physician's offices, and any PPE you need for your businesses, please visit us at docrx.com. That's docrx.com, docrx.com. Now enjoy the show.
I used to be like, you couldn't make mistakes. The learning is in the failure. So you always tell yourself, I am not a master at what I'm doing yet. Always with that word yet. You know, this stuff, change and changing your mindset is not easy and it is uncomfortable. And that's what you want in this mindset. You get used to being uncomfortable. It's giving myself that leeway to understand the process, be a student and always be a student, and be okay when something doesn't go your way. It's a learning tool along the way. And it's not this, oh my gosh, I made one mistake, the whole thing's over, the business is going to fail.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today, Johnny Gwin, the producer at Deep Fried Studios, is going to be on the show. He's been doing an Audible book that he's going to talk to us about, Fixed versus Growth Mindset. Can't wait. Hey, I'm Karen. I'm a former CPA, entrepreneur, business consultant with big ideas.
Welcome to Cheers to Business.
Johnny Gwin, thank you for being on the show.
I love being in the studio because I get to use these expensive microphones that I bought years ago that I never get to talk on. So it's fantastic. Thank you. And I'm excited to talk about this because this really has been eye-opening for me recently, this subject matter.
All right, so fixed versus growth mindset. Define each.
Okay, fixed mindset is you have a way of thinking that's fixed, meaning you have determined that an outcome is already predetermined. So take the idea that you were little and someone said, hey, you're terrible at math. And you just believe that. And as life went on, you didn't try anymore because you said, that's the way the world is. So I don't worry about being good at math. And you just stop. And the idea is that you use that excuse every time someone says something like, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z with math? And you say, yeah, math's not my thing. I'm terrible at it. You didn't even try to be good at it. You just determined because someone told you that you're not very good at it. So it's a fixed outcome mindset.
I've got to know what is the person who that just ticks them off and they're going to go prove that they can do it.
Okay, so before we get into that, let's define what growth mindset is. So a growth mindset is someone that says, hey, wait a minute. Why in the world are you telling me this and I'm thinking this? What if I actually took the time to incrementally get better at this skill? And so now I take the learning journey. So you have a love of learning now. So every time you go along this path, you're not going to be an expert the second day or the first year or maybe the first 3 years, but you take on the mindset that I can grow to become this person that is good at this skill. So it's a lifelong learning love, which is the idea of like, I don't have to be a mathematician. I might not be a chess master, right? But the idea is like, I can get 10% better or 15% better to be able to talk business better or talk math better. But I have to be able to have the mindset to say, along the way, it's going to be a hard journey, but I'm okay with the failures doing it. And because that's how you learn.
Yeah.
And you don't stop and give up because, oh, I'm just not good at this. That's the part that makes you switch over from being fixed to a growth mindset. And most people are not patient enough to be able to do this.
But people who do that to themselves do that to everything around them.
Well,
this person's going to react like this. I know this isn't going to work because. Okay, that's hard for me to understand.
That starts to work into the world of they think the world is set, especially if that's a boss. That's a very, very tough place to work because even when you bring new ideas, it's, that doesn't work. Well, why doesn't it work? Well, it's never worked before. Well, that doesn't mean it's not going to work now.
Exactly.
And I know it sounds real simplistic of what we're saying, but Carol Dweck is the writer of this book, and the book's called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And our website is mindsetonline.com. I mean, it gets brought up a lot on a lot of podcasts. That's where I found tons of podcasts, peak performance podcasts. It's where I found this information that I've been obsessed with the last couple of months. And it sounds so simplistic, but it's hard to make that switch to be able to be someone who's kind of a black and white world. This is how the world is, to being later in life, which is people get kind of stuck in their ways.
They do.
And then to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to quit saying all this stuff that I just think the world is this way, because you know it probably is not what you think it is. It's probably shades of it. And I've really enjoyed going more to a growth mindset because it gives me leeway to, when I don't do the right things or I'm learning something new, when I do make the failures, I give myself a lot of forgiveness and I start making a journal of what I'm learning as I'm going.
Do you think it's a personality trait?
Oh, I think a lot of that is. I also think at some point you just get tired of being a no person all the time. Or, first of all, who likes a know-it-all?
Nobody likes a know-it-all, but nobody likes a no person. But I don't know that a no person can stop being a no person without conscious thought.
Well, they can't, because let me tell you, I've been reading about this, even though the podcasting, I've been obsessing about it the last couple of months. I have been reading about this and hearing other podcasts that I have made for other people talking about this book, Carol Dweck's work. And I've understood it and said, oh, in principle, I totally get it. But you know what? I really didn't take it to heart, meaning
you have to apply it. And
you have to be ready for it. So I will give you a little example. I was playing golf a couple weeks ago, and I have not hit a golf ball in 3 years. And I was a really good golfer growing up. When you don't play for a while, you get pretty bad at it. You never master golf, by the way. So I was out there, and my whole goal was I'm not going to take score because who cares? I haven't been out there in 3 years. I was just glad to be out with friends. My only goal was not to slow down the guys who play golf all the time. I'm not going to worry about how important every shot is, because what happens is you get really tense when you hit the ball. Like
people who worry about every little thing that they do screw up.
The idea is so you're so tense going, if I hit this ball, if I hit it wrong, the whole hole's going to be a mess. And then I'm hitting out of the woods, and then I have to hit it out of the woods. And so your brain, you haven't hit the ball yet, and you've already made yourself so tense. And relaxing is a great way to be good at sports. What I said was, okay, do basic things, process. So I know you breathe, you visualize the shot, and you know what? You don't kill it. You don't try to swing hard out of it. And what I kept saying to myself was, no big deal if you don't hit a great shot. You'll just figure out how to hit this shot better with this club the next hole. And the idea is just give yourself some leeway and forgive yourself. Just hit the ball and just take it easy. Well, I almost broke 90 because when I wasn't worried about the outcome every time I hit the ball, it was more about me just striking the ball. It was me being relaxed. It was the idea of, I'm just not going to be that big of a deal, and I'm not going to stress out if it is a bad shot. And I did watch my friends who are much better at golf. They would hit a bad shot, and they would be thinking about that bad shot as they went up to the second bad.
Which makes that one bad. It
became a second bad shot. And by the time they finished 3 holes, they're still thinking about the hole that screwed up everything else. And the whole thing was me not caring about it. And I did care about it because I wanted to get better at it, because I looked at it as more as practicing. But I know it's goofy to say golf is that the way to look at this fixed and growth mindset compared to like what I do in business per se, but it's the same principle. It's when I take on some new tool or some new mastery in my business, it's giving myself that leeway to understand the principles, understand the process, be a student and always be a student, and be okay when something doesn't go your way. It's a learning tool along the way. And it's not this, oh my gosh, I made one mistake, the whole thing's over, the business is going to fail.
Because it's not.
Most of the times it does not. Now, Carol Dweck will get into this where you can't fail always and so bad you can't get back up. And what it's called is managing the downside. You have to be able to, and students, if you had a good teacher and a good mentor, like just say driving, say learning how to drive, they're not going to put the first time driver in a Ferrari and say, let's go 110 miles an hour. That's going to be very bad. So as a student, you have to learn, and hopefully you have a mentor and people that are helping you that aren't putting you in situations that would give you such a big downside you couldn't come back from it.
Brilliant.
Well, it's a simple thing. And again, I really have not been good at math my whole life. I think a lot of it's because I've always said that. I'm not good at math because I was told that. But now
you've said that to me before.
Well, and plus I was in a creative field. I mean, I was an art director. They called me Doodle Boy. That was what they call art direction and art and advertising for Forever and Graphic Design. So they didn't even give you respect when you couldn't even write words. It was just, you just draw stuff. That's what you do. And they kind of give you that idea you can't be a business person because you're creative.
But it pigeonholes you for life in that you don't think you can do anything else. I mean, actors do that with roles.
Right. I'm a dramatic actor. I can't do comedy.
Action figures can't do something serious.
Correct. And what I find is just the opposite, because I'm a huge comedy fan. Like I love stand-up comedians. Actually, comedy folks do drama really well. I think because stand-up comedy is in itself a performance, and that they really are this kind of like sad clown, happy clown kind of thing.
Well, abstract creative people are very good mathematicians.
Right, and the funny thing is, I can understand a lot of I read a whole book on chaos theory, which is high-end math. It's very theoretical math that goes into quantum mechanics, and I could understand the context of it because that's how my brain thinks, in context and in concept. Now, I could not get into the algorithms and I could not get into the mathematics and the formulas because I never spent those years even trying to understand that, because my out was, I'm bad at math, so I'm not even going to try.
Well, that's so sad that anybody is pigeonholed that young.
Well, be careful what you say to people. I hate to say it. My parents were trying to ease my stress and ease my frustration by saying, it kind of runs in the family. None of us are very good at math. But be careful by saying that kind of stuff, because you know what happens when mom and dad said it? I was like, yeah, they're right. Screw it. I'm not good at math.
I think people stop trying.
Definitely, because look, who wants to be frustrated all the time? I mean, look, I was a musician for 20 years. I played in bands that traveled and made records and everything. And I will tell you right now, I am not a musician. I'm a music lover who got to play music because I had to practice really hard to be okay. To play with the musicians that I got to play with meant I had to practice 3 times longer and harder than they did. Most people would not put up with that. They just don't. That's just not what they do. Now, if someone a long time ago would have told me, hey, you're not good at music, you shouldn't do music, if I'd have believed them, then I never would have done some of the really great things and fun things that I did along the way. But I just said, screw it, I'm going to do it. And that's what you said earlier. What about those people that say, no, forget it, I'm going to do it anyway? Well, some people are just, I'm going to do it regardless, and I'm going to sacrifice for it.
Well, it just makes me mad when somebody assumes that I can't do something, so then I go do it just to prove that I could.
You want me to do something, tell me I can't do it.
Right.
Because I'm a stubborn jackass.
All right, so I think the general theme here is that it's not good to have a fixed mindset.
Definitely not.
All right.
But I guarantee you someone could give you a theory of why that works, why it could work, or where it's beneficial.
And it may work for them.
And the thing is, I think, is not to be rigid. I think the idea is sometimes
negative.
When
I say rigid becomes negative, I think that's a problem.
Well, no is not always a bad answer or a negative answer. Sometimes
but I think somebody can be fixed without being negative.
Correct. And I will tell you, like, risk management and risk assessment is very much sometimes a fixed mindset because they have the probability in front of them. Do you know what I'm saying? You almost don't. I don't like the idea of good and bad. I think Christopher Coleman said that last week about business. He doesn't like saying businesses are bad and good. I think he said healthy and unhealthy.
Yeah.
That's a really good way of looking at things, because I would say some things that are inherently seen as negative can actually be positive in some situations. The trick is to be flexible and adaptive and know when to use this type of thinking. I think it's easy to be fixed-minded. I think it's harder to be growth-minded.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah.
By the way, I had a great time speaking at Chris Coleman's event this past week, Mucked Up Nights Mobile at the Innovation Portal. It was a great crowd, and we just had a really good time, and we basically talked about what we've screwed up.
Right. And then, I've been thinking about that a lot. There's a lot of podcasts that talk about that. It's almost getting to a point where I call it failure porn. Like, it's almost everywhere. But the thing I've been seeing about that is it tells me that people I look up to and think they can do no wrong do the things that I do all day, and puts me in a place that makes me feel like, man, because let me tell you what, I literally have done some things in the last 5 years of my life that changed everything. Like, I went, not for the best. I mean, I think the best in some ways, but terrible on the ledger side was a terrible decision. But in the long run, I think it's better for me. But that's okay, because my heroes are people, especially the last couple of years, are people who have been millionaires 3 times over. Meaning they were millionaires and lost every penny.
Oh, I've known quite a few.
And did it again and lost it again. And my thing is, like, my God, if they can do it 3 times, why can't I do it once?
I can think of 3 off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And they're probably not the same ones.
Yeah.
Now, when Chris and I were talking on last week's show too, it came up, I brought this finite thinking versus infinite thinking.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that the people that have infinite thinking get bored.
Okay, explain infinite thinking.
Growth. To me, that's growth mindset. It's kind of the
same
same
thing. So the world's bigger than what you just see in front of us. Finite to me says, this is the world I live in. Here's the box I live in. That's all I have.
Yeah, I think infinite and growth mindset people are looking outside the box. What else is available?
Well, kind of reminds me of, again, abundance and scarcity, which is a huge term in economics. The idea, do I have an abundant mindset or do I have a scarcity mindset? Because I can tell you in the advertising world that I was around, the best businesses said there's so much business out there that we don't worry about our competitors. We don't worry about people stealing our clients. None of that, because there's so much business out there.
I've always said that.
And then I've been in the business where the scarcity mindset says there's one pie in the world and we're all taking slices of the damn pie. And I'm sitting here going, and I've worked in those places and didn't know how...
They're usually not happy.
Well, and how dangerous that place was to be, because it infected every way of thinking. Every pitch was the most important pitch. Every client was so damn important to keep that you kept a client that wasn't best for you, and they weren't, and the agency was not good for that client the way everybody acted. That is and again, it's hard to go from that world of thinking that there's one pie in the world to understanding, no, there's infinite supply of pies. Is how do you find them?
Well, tomato scarcity, fixed, finite. To me, it's all a mindset.
Of course.
Whether somebody's open or closed, there's another label we can put on it, but it's just of opening yourself up. So in this book by
Carol Dweck,
does she list maybe 3 ways of how to go from a fixed to a growth mindset?
Well, there's a lot more than 3. I remember there's a whole book written about this, but let me give you some of the ones that I thought were my favorite. Appreciate process over results. You have to acknowledge your weaknesses, so you have to know what you're actually not strong at. You can't ignore the weaknesses. That means you'll never manage a way to improve yourself. You have to cultivate a sense of purpose. That's the ask why. That's a real big thing. A lot of people on the show always say, what's your why? This is the big one. Don't say failing, always say learning. That one kind of speaks for itself, and I think that's a great one. You value effort over talent, meaning for you to be a genius, you have to put the hard work in, you have to sacrifice. Challenges are opportunities. Okay, change the way you look at it. The obstacle is actually a reward. Consider challenges opportunities. You prefer growth over speed, meaning learning, you enjoy the learning process more than you do the results process. You don't look for other people's approval. That's a big thing too, because you kind of have to learn it on your own timetable. Criticism is a gift, as long as it's positive feedback. Again, take someone's criticism with a grain of salt. You never know what's working, but criticism can be the fastest way to learn, because someone that you respect telling you what you're not doing well is one of the quickest ways to learn, especially if you respect what they do. I mean, grow with others. Find other people. That's maybe a mastermind group you could have, or maybe in your office or in your company, you can create this kind of group where everyone starts thinking this way. There's power in people. And if you have a lot of people doing that, they can encourage you as well. Take time to reflect. So when you learn a bunch of stuff, be able to look back and see what you learned and see what your progress is. Here's the last thing I like a lot too. It's the not yet technique. So Carol Dweck says the not yet mindset is a great way to refrain your thought process. So when you're struggling, just remind yourself you haven't mastered the skill yet. That's the word, not yet. James Altucher he has a great podcast called The James Altucher Show. He is an amazing thinker, but he was a chess master very young in age, and then he quit playing. And he said, I didn't grow as a chess master because I would never go look at the chess matches that I lost. Because supposedly when you're doing chess, every move you make and every move your opponent makes, you mark it so that you go back and see what you've done.
Where you messed up.
Especially patterns too, Well, he said, I hated losing so much that he didn't want to think about it. And he said,
but then you can't get better.
And that's what he said. He goes, I only went and studied the ones I won, not the few that I lost.
Oh, why would you do that?
And he said, if I would have, because he's gone back and looked at them now. He said, if I would have studied those few that he lost, he said, I would have infinitely gotten better as a chess player immediately.
Did you see Queen's Gambit?
Yeah, so good.
I know, so good.
They're making a Broadway show about it now.
Are they really?
Yeah,
all right, I got to watch it. That show was on, and they were, somebody was assessing her personality or something in the show, and my husband was walking through the room, and he turned around and he went, that's you.
Because you can see all that, you visualize all this stuff.
You visualize all the different ways it could go.
This is where it gets starting getting weird with fixed and growth mindset, because I don't want to confuse it with events and being able to kind of read the tea leaves, because That has to do with experience.
You have to be prepared when that tea leaves wrong.
But fixed and growth mindset is what I keep saying is mastery, is learning to master a skill. But I will tell you, someone who has seen something and experience can see outcome because they say probability is, I've done this so many times, I can see the 5th, 7th, 10th, and 12th move ahead, because it's kind of like the way that like behavior is just going to happen that way. And so that's where I say you have to learn how to go in between or back and forth between. There's a fixed mindset of using your experience, right, to say, hey, I kind of know how this is going to work, especially dealing with people.
But it's the probability of human nature.
Correct. And some people don't change.
Most people will react to this. If you
read neuroscience, they say we're all triggered by the same things. And instinct has us doing things that we have to break that instinct because we act a certain way.
Yeah, it's human nature.
Yeah. Human behaviorists will say, we all think we're such unique snowflakes.
Mm-hmm.
We really are very, very tribal, and we really do things very much on a trigger where I can almost tell you how someone's going to behave to something. But again, we're kind of going back and forth with the idea of fixed and growth mindset with the idea of learning versus kind of like how reality is. But then I'll also say, what is reality? That's a whole nother concept.
You want to know something I do in interviews? I will constructively criticize something on their resume to see how they react.
Sure.
Then I'll say, if you line that up with there, it'll make your resume look better, or whatever. The ones who get very defensive, I don't want working for me.
What if one actually takes it well, but then says, I respectfully disagree with that?
I like them too. Yeah, either that or, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Thank you so much.
I always think interviews are like the dumbest way to hire somebody.
They are.
I get why you do it. It's actually that's a gatekeeper thing. Like you bring in 30.
It's a weed out process.
And then you get down to 10, and then you get down to, and then you take them out, 3 of them to dinner, and you say, no, this is a real interview right here. This is where we actually decide because you made it all the way through, you're the top 10%, and now we decide if we like you or not, and are you a dummy or not, like a real social dummy.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Well, it took me a long time to learn that. I just wanted to get to the
but sometimes I'll hire on the spot because they got good juju, and my gut just knows.
Well, the best interview I've ever been to was they gave all 3 of us and paid us and gave us a project. And I thought that was kind of cool because the idea was like, obviously you have the background.
You look good on paper.
Now let's see if you can actually do it. I will say one of the people did not show up to show theirs, which showed me something too.
Well, they just weeded themselves out, didn't they?
I think the idea is you lied on your resume, which is an interesting thing. But I thought it was cool they paid you too because they wanted to be in good faith. I thought it was interesting.
No, I think that is a good way to do it.
But who has time for that though? A lot of times it's hard to have time to do that to somebody. This is an
depends on how bad you want the job.
Well, in advertising, what's amazing to me is you have a portfolio. Nobody cares about my resume. They know you by reputation by some point. But the other thing is they look at your portfolio of work and they show, this is what they've done.
What if you're new starting out?
Hopefully the school that you go to or college you go to allows you to put together what's called a spec portfolio, so it's kind of fake work.
My nephew's doing that at Auburn. He's an architectural
engineer.
Correct.
So they're real work, but it's not work for a client. Like the school I went to was a trade school in advertising, graphic design. So you had no teachers that were teachers. They all actually worked in advertising or graphic design. They just happened to teach at the school.
That's a cool concept.
And they would give you real world problems, and you would solve them, and then by the time you finished, it was actually called Portfolio Center, because what you're doing is you don't get a diploma, you get a portfolio.
Now, we started this one particular conversation right now with 3 things of how to change from such a closed, fixed mindset to a more open growth mindset.
1, know it exists. Number 2, Number 2, be self-aware of what you are, I would think. And 3, read Carol Dweck's book and then start looking at the idea of how do you start changing the way that you look at the world to, 1, not be so hard on yourself when you're learning something, and take on something to be able to learn how to learn. I mean, that was the thing that got me was I'd read all of this but never put it into practice till that golf game. And I actually let go and said, this doesn't matter.
It's a conscious decision.
And it really doesn't matter. I wasn't learning something new for podcasts for the Cheers to Business podcast, which needed to go out that week. That's kind of important.
Yeah.
But start small. Maybe it's the idea of like, hey, I've always kind of wanted to learn how to play the piano. We'll start with something like that, and don't worry about, you're not going to be Liberace the first freaking week. Don't be so hard on yourself. The learning is in the failure. That is the big thing, is being able to see it that way, not getting frustrated. And in the world we live in, it's hard for people to have that patience. And I love that not yet technique. So you always tell yourself, I am not a master at what I'm doing yet. Always with that word yet. It's a strange word that I would think will be a positive word, but I think I'm going to use that a lot more. I'm not the perfect husband yet. I think it's really smart to maintain that not yet technique. I think you'd plateau out pretty soon if you're really good at something at the beginning and you didn't challenge yourself to be better at it. I think you kind of hit a plateau really quick. And then it starts not becoming as much fun, I would imagine. Maybe. I don't know.
I wouldn't think so.
Well, I have a lot of friends that play music, and they kind of never got better than they were at 19. And they're still good, but you know what I'm saying? They don't really care about it as much anymore. Where people that I have known that...
Does it become a job and not a passion?
That's different, because the ones I do know that are really, really good, they are full-on professional musicians, and I think some of them, maybe they do have that feeling. But I'm a type of person that likes to be challenged. So the idea is if you learn to challenge yourself, then that adds to interest in what you're doing. But look, I'm not here to tell you how to do it. I'm here to tell you there is to look more into it, because I think it's a lifelong of learning this stuff. I don't think you all of a sudden you have this way of thinking. The thing I think is interesting too is that was what she wrote. I thought this was really, really good. Children who associate success with hard work tend to have a mastery-oriented response to challenging situations, while children who see themselves as just plain smart or dumb or good or bad at something have a learned helplessness orientation. You got to work at it. You have to sacrifice something to be good at something. They have a process now of learning. That's how you learn. It's not easy and quick.
Well, then it becomes part of the normal process, not something not giving them they're entitled to.
I'm supposed to fall down on this bike when I'm learning to go from training wheels to two wheels.
Yes.
Again, don't hurt yourself so much you break your arm, but the idea is you teach them a way to, you're supposed to fall down to be able to ride the bike. Over time, they learn that by creating
they'll put their
person.
foot out faster to stop themselves.
Well, again, you learn to mitigate things. You learn to say, if I know I'm going to fall, how about I learn how to stop quicker? Exactly. You learn other ways of doing it. But I think what's so great is it starts creating a mold for someone to be able to handle failure better, which is what you did with Christopher Coleman's group, which I'm not going to say the name, because at a
mucked up mobile.
Yeah, effed up mobile. It's okay. It's not this.
I was fine with it.
I don't think it's a big deal. We're making such a big deal out of failure now. I'm trying to get the point where it's not just a big deal. It's just part of the process. I get why we do make a big deal of it, because no one ever talks about their failures now. Everybody's talking about their failures. But I'm getting to the point where I don't want to even talk about why that's even a big deal. Failure is just a part of what we do, where it's not worth me even telling my story. Yeah, that's what happens, you know.
I had fun doing it. I just told everybody how I screwed up all kinds of different ways.
But I used to be like, you couldn't make mistakes.
But you know what this reminds me of? This whole fixed mindset growth thing is the book Rocket Fuel.
I know Scott Howell from the Insurance Guys podcast, that's a real big book for him.
Here's how I found out about it. After our first couple shows, Billy Williams, who's a financial advisor, he had listened to the podcast. He said, he called me up, have you read the book Rocket Fuel? I said, no. He said, you've got to hear it. It's you and Katie made over.
Cool.
And it's about visionaries and integrators,
right? And
how they need each other. Visionary is full growth on mindset. I mean, we can do anything, and the integrators saying, you come back because these are our limitations.
So it's the architect and the engineer.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is architects actually do both. That's the crazy thing. There are very few people that can actually do it. Yeah.
That's what my nephew's going to be.
And I understand that because there's a book called Making Things Happen, Making Ideas Happen, Scott Belsky, and he actually studied it for his Wharton School of Business PhD, and no one had ever done it before. And what he did was he always found out these very successful things we know in life. There's always the blue skyer, he called him, the one who looked in the blue sky, and there was always the one who was the chiseler, meaning you always had these two way of thinking, which a lot of times could be the idea of growth and fixed. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to engineering. No, they're fixed outcomes.
They are so fixed. My brother's one.
But it's okay to have the idea that says, but what if? Let's challenge those. Let's challenge those ideas. And I think that's what I'm getting to is the idea of like, let's just challenge kind of some things that we have in our brain when, when you keep saying, well, that's just the way we always do it. Well, if I ever hear that.
I hate that.
When you've said it before.
It's Sally. Same as last year.
It makes me very concerned if I hear that. Well, that's the way we always do it. Well, the world changes. Why in the hell don't you change? Mm-hmm. You think you're the only constant in the galaxy?
If you don't change, you will die.
And some things, just keep going, and that's fine too. And that's how some things work. And this stuff, changing your mindset is not easy, and it is uncomfortable. And that's what you want in this mindset. You get used to being uncomfortable. where most people don't like that.
But it's okay for people how they are. You have your 8-to-5ers
Sure.
that are fixed. They just want to go do their job and then go home. And then you got the ones that are just wide open and want to, look at that.
But the thing is,
do that.
this can
it's
work.
Okay.
But
they benefit each other.
But this could be a way of thinking that it's not always business related. It could be in other things in your life. You might want to take on a late hobby in life. You want to, and the idea is to help you be able to stick with it into a creative way of thinking that crosses over into a whole way of thinking. And my thing comes down to, do not believe the world is exactly like you think it is.
It's not.
Because it's not going to be.
But I think people's personality of how they operate in business, whether a fixed or growth, bleeds over to their overall personality and their hobbies and everything else they do.
It does, and you can see somebody how they deal with their family and friends, and you'll know how they work with people too.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I know we went all over the place on this one.
We did,
but
we usually do though.
But it is so. Carol Dweck, the book is called Mindset, and I really like what I'm finding out about myself, and it's very difficult for me. I was a hybrid. I did a lot of. I love the idea of what could be, but I did a lot of that's how I am thing too, which I just don't do anymore. Right? And now I'm questioning a lot right now, which is good and bad. But I kind of enjoy the process because the next half of my life, I kind of don't want it to be as fixed as the other one was. That got in my way a lot in the last couple decades.
Well, Johnny Gwin, you've given me a lot to think about because I like to grow my mindset.
You do, and this show, I hear a lot of these things we talked about throughout all the seasons. You hear bits and pieces of it, and the people that I know are successful are the ones that are already integrating this without putting titles on it and labels on it, and that's what I think is pretty cool.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Always happy to be in Deep Fried Studios.
That's it. You live here, right?
Please be sure to subscribe to Cheers to Business podcast on iTunes or anywhere else that you get your podcast. Visit our Facebook and be sure to give us a like. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to discuss, shoot us an email from the website cheerstobusiness.com.